In June 1944, the SS Hitlerjugend Division was ordered to defend Caen against the British advance after the Normandy landings. In 2 weeks of fighting, this division, composed mostly of 17 and 18-year-olds, suffered 60% casualties. Wehrmacht commanders, observing the operations from adjacent sectors, recorded a recurring assessment in their diaries: unnecessary waste of lives due to tactical fanaticism. This episode was not an exception. Throughout the Second World War, the Waffen-SS accumulated casualty rates consistently higher than those of the Wehrmacht in comparable operations, while regime propaganda presented them as the Reich's elite fighting force. Captured German operational reports reveal a more complex and disturbing reality. Units repeatedly sent on extremely high-risk missions with tactical doctrines that prioritized ideological fanaticism over force preservation and a deeply conflictual relationship with the traditional military high command. The German military archives kept in Freiburg, combined with Wehrmacht documentation captured by the Allies and testimonies from officers of both organizations during the post-war period, make it possible to examine a fundamental tension that ran through the Nazi military apparatus: the clash between Prussian military professionalism and National Socialist ideological fanaticism. The SS embodied the latter principle. The Wehrmacht, for all its complicity, retained vestiges of the former. The historiographical question that emerges is not simple propaganda or counter-propaganda. German operational documents, written for internal consumption and without any intent of public justification, reveal that Wehrmacht commanders regarded SS tactics as criminally irresponsible from a purely military perspective, regardless of moral considerations about the war crimes committed by both organizations. This distinction is fundamental. The criticism was not ethical but technical, which makes it historically more revealing about how the Third Reich's military apparatus actually functioned. Today we will examine this central contradiction: how an organization presented as the regime's elite fighting force operated with tactical doctrines that, according to its own comrades in arms, amounted to a systematic waste of human resources. We will analyze specific operation orders, comparative casualty rates documented in German military records, and the testimonies of officers from both organizations that reveal a deep fracture in the conduct of the Nazi war effort. Origins and doctrine: two conceptions of war. To understand the operational conflict between the Wehrmacht and the Waffen-SS, we must examine their radically different institutional origins and the conceptions of war each organization embodied. The Wehrmacht inherited a military tradition dating back to the 18th century Prussian army, reformed after the Napoleonic Wars under the principles of Clausewitz, von Moltke, and the German Military Academy. This tradition valued Auftragstaktik, mission-type tactics, in which junior officers had the autonomy to meet objectives by whatever method they deemed most efficient. The concept of Bewegungskrieg, war of maneuver, prioritized maneuver over direct confrontation, the preservation of combat power as a strategic resource, and economy of means. A traditional Prussian axiom held that a successful tactical withdrawal requires as much skill as a victorious offensive. This military professionalism, developed over centuries, coexisted uncomfortably with the Nazi regime. Although the Wehrmacht collaborated extensively in war crimes and wars of extermination, especially on the Eastern Front, its command structure maintained a certain continuity with military traditions prior to National Socialism. General staff officers were products of military academies, where military history, logistics, and strategic theory were studied in depth. Promotion was based, at least in part, on documented professional merit. The SS, by contrast, began in 1925 as the Nazi Party's paramilitary organization, initially as Hitler's personal guard. When Heinrich Himmler assumed command in 1929, he transformed the organization according to a radically different vision. The SS would not be merely soldiers, but a racial knightly order, embodying the ideological values of National Socialism in their purest form. Racial purity, absolute loyalty to the Führer, and ideological fanaticism were selection criteria as important as military capabilities, often more so. The creation of the Waffen-SS as the SS's military arm began modestly in 1939 with 3 regiments. Its expansion during the war was exponential, from approximately 18,000 men in 1939 to nearly 900,000 in 1944. This accelerated growth had consequences for the quality of training and the experience of officers. Whereas the Wehrmacht required years of staff college training for senior officers, the SS promoted heavily on the basis of ideological fanaticism and party connections. The tactical doctrine of the Waffen-SS, codified in training manuals preserved in German archives, emphasized concepts such as will to victory, fanatical tenacity, and contempt for death. The SS training manual, SS Ausbildungsvorschrift, of 1941 explicitly stated that will surpasses weaponry, and that to fall back is to betray the Führer. These were not mere propaganda slogans, but operational directives informing real tactical decisions. Wehrmacht operational documents captured after the war reveal the frustration of professional commanders with this approach. General der Panzertruppen Leo Geyer von Schweppenburg, commander of Panzer Group West, wrote in a July 1944 report after observing operations of the 12th SS Panzer Division Hitlerjugend, tenacity is admirable, but holding untenable positions to the point of complete annihilation is not a military virtue. It is a criminal waste of German blood. An orderly withdrawal to preserve combat power would have been the correct decision. This tension also manifested in the command structure. The Waffen-SS technically operated under the Wehrmacht's tactical command on the battlefield, but Himmler maintained administrative and disciplinary authority, creating a dual chain of command that generated operational confusion. Wehrmacht commanders could issue tactical orders to SS units, but they could not remove incompetent SS officers, reorganize units, or modify training doctrines. This structure guaranteed constant conflict. The ideological contrast was fundamental. For the Wehrmacht, war was a political instrument to be conducted efficiently to achieve national strategic objectives, following the Clausewitzian tradition. For the SS, war was an existential racial test in which will and sacrifice had intrinsic value, regardless of concrete tactical results. A Wehrmacht soldier was a professional, an SS soldier was a believer. This philosophical difference would translate into deadly operational divergences when these organizations faced the realities of modern combat on the Eastern and Western fronts. Eastern Front, the laboratory of fanaticism. Operation Barbarossa, launched on the 22nd of June 1941, provided the first large-scale laboratory for comparing the operational performance of the Wehrmacht and the Waffen-SS under extreme combat conditions. German military records preserved at the Bundesarchiv Militärarchiv in Freiburg, complemented by unit diaries captured by the Soviets and later transferred to Western archives after the Cold War, reveal consistent patterns that illuminate the doctrinal differences between the two organizations. During the Battle of Kiev in September 1941, the SS division Das Reich took part in encircling Soviet forces alongside several Wehrmacht divisions. Operational reports from the 9th Army Corps document repeated instances in which SS commanders refused orders for tactical consolidation. On the 14th of September, when Corps Command ordered Das Reich to establish defensive positions to allow other units to complete the encirclement, SS Brigadeführer Wilhelm Bittrich replied that the SS advance, they do not defend, and launched a frontal attack against fortified Soviet positions that resulted in 400 casualties in 6 hours without significant territorial gain. General der Infanterie Hermann Geyer recorded in his personal diary, "The SS confuse aggressiveness with military effectiveness. Their refusal to follow sensible tactical orders is not courage, but indiscipline that endangers broader operations. If they were under my administrative responsibility, several officers would face courts-martial." This pattern was repeated systematically. In the Battle of Rostov in November 1941, the SS division Leibstandarte Adolf Hitler was ordered to withdraw when Soviet forces launched a massive counterattack that threatened to isolate advanced German units. SS Obergruppenführer Sepp Dietrich rejected the order from Generalfeldmarschall Gerd von Rundstedt, declaring that the SS do not retreat. The division remained in exposed positions and suffered 50% casualties before finally being authorized, on Hitler's personal instruction, to withdraw 5 days later, when the tactical situation had deteriorated further. Von Rundstedt wrote a detailed report to Hitler protesting SS insubordination, arguing that fanaticism does not substitute for professional military judgment, and that refusing a tactical withdrawal turns courage into organized suicide. Hitler's response was to dismiss von Rundstedt. This episode set a precedent. Wehrmacht commanders who criticized SS tactics risked their careers. The siege of Leningrad provided another revealing example. The SS division Totenkopf participated in encirclement operations during 1942-1943. German medical records, analyzed by historian Ben Shepard in his study Hitler's Soldiers 2016, show that Totenkopf experienced frostbite rates 40% higher than the average for Wehrmacht divisions in the same sector. German military medical research determined that this was because SS commanders interpreted hold at all costs directives literally, prohibiting tactical rotations that would have allowed soldiers to warm up periodically. Generaloberst Georg Lindemann, commander of the 18th Army, ordered an investigation that concluded frostbite casualties in SS units are self-inflicted through misapplied fanaticism. Preserving combat capability requires recognizing human physiological limits. SS commanders apparently consider admitting human vulnerability ideologically unacceptable. The Battle of Kharkov in March 1943 dramatically illustrates the operational consequences of these doctrinal differences. The SS divisions, Leibstandarte, Das Reich, and Totenkopf, were concentrated in the 2nd SS Panzer Corps under SS Obergruppenführer Paul Hauser to retake the city. Hauser had been a professional Reichswehr officer before joining the SS, giving him a unique perspective. During the battle, Hauser showed unusual tactical flexibility for an SS commander, employing flanking maneuvers and mobile warfare that minimized German losses while maximizing Soviet casualties. The operation succeeded. Kharkov was retaken with relatively moderate German losses. However, the success generated controversy within the SS. Himmler privately expressed concern that Hauser was adopting methods too similar to the Wehrmacht, and that victory through tactical cunning was less ideologically valuable than victory through heroic sacrifice. This internal SS tension between military effectiveness and ideological purity reveals a fundamental contradiction. When the Waffen-SS adopted professional tactics similar to the Wehrmacht's, they achieved operational success. But this generated ideological anxiety within the organization. German casualty records on the Eastern Front are revealing. The study by Rüdiger Overmans shows that Waffen-SS divisions suffered casualty rates approximately 30% higher than Wehrmacht divisions in comparable sectors between 1941 and 1943. This differential cannot be explained solely by participation in more intense fighting. Even in the same battles, they adopted costlier tactics. Normandy and the myth of elite status. The Normandy landings on the 6th of June 1944 provided the stage where the contradictions between the Wehrmacht and the Waffen-SS reached their most dramatic and best documented expression. British, American, and German archives on the Normandy campaign are exceptionally complete, allowing an unusually precise reconstruction of operational differences between the two organizations. The 12th SS Panzer Division, Hitler Jugend, formed in 1943 with veterans of the Hitler Youth, was positioned as a mobile reserve near Caen. When the invasion began, this division of roughly 20,000 men was one of the first major armored units to confront British and Canadian forces. Its commander, SS Brigadeführer Kurt Meyer, known as Panzer Meyer, aged 33, embodied the SS leadership style: aggressive, charismatic, ideologically committed, but with limited staff training compared to equivalent Wehrmacht officers. On the 7th of June, Meyer ordered an armored counterattack against well-established Canadian positions near the Abbey of Ardennes without adequate reconnaissance, without sufficient artillery preparation, and without coordination with adjacent Wehrmacht units. The attack was launched frontally in daylight against prepared defensive positions. Canadian Sherman Firefly tanks, equipped with 17-pounder guns capable of penetrating German armor at long range, destroyed 40 Panzer IVs and several Tiger Wurst tanks in the first hours. The division suffered roughly 2,000 casualties in 2 days of fighting. General Lieutenant Fritz Bayerlein, commander of Panzer Lehr Division operating in an adjacent sector, wrote in his operational report of the 9th of June, The SS attack was conducted with admirable bravery, but with unforgivable tactical incompetence. A properly trained staff officer would never have ordered a frontal armored attack against established anti-tank positions without reconnaissance, prior artillery suppression, or a covered approach. Tanks are strategic assets far too valuable to be squandered on theatrical heroism. Over the following weeks, the Hitlerjugend defended Caen with extraordinary tenacity, but also with extreme tactical rigidity. Hitler had ordered that Caen be held at all costs, and SS commanders interpreted this literally. They repeatedly rejected suggestions from Wehrmacht officers to withdraw to more advantageous defensive positions south of the city, enabling a defense in depth that would have inflicted greater Allied losses while preserving German strength. General Feldmarschall Erwin Rommel, commander of Army Group B responsible for the defense of Normandy, personally visited SS positions on the 14th of June and tried to persuade Meyer to adopt a flexible defense. According to Army Group B's war diary, Rommel argued, rigid defense of urban positions against overwhelming Allied air and artillery superiority is suicide. We must trade space for time, inflict losses through mobile counterattacks, and preserve our forces for decisive operations later. Meyer reported the conversation to his superior, SS Obergruppenführer Sepp Dietrich, who passed it on to Himmler. The response was unequivocal. The SS defend every meter of German won ground. To retreat is ideological treason, regardless of supposed tactical advantages. Stand fast. The Battle of Caen continued until mid-July, when the city finally fell. The Hitlerjugend had been reduced from 20,000 personnel to about 8,000 operational soldiers, a 60% casualty rate in 6 weeks. Panzer Lehr Division, which employed a more flexible mobile defense in adjacent sectors, suffered about 35% casualties in the same period, while inflicting similar proportions of losses on the Allies. German operational analyses of the battle are revealing. Oberst Hans von Luck, commander of the 125th Panzer Grenadier Regiment, who fought near SS units throughout the campaign, wrote in his memoir, Panzer Commander, 1989, "I admired the individual courage of SS soldiers, but their tactics were criminally incompetent. They defended positions to annihilation when tactical withdrawal was obviously necessary. Their officers seemed to fear accusations of cowardice from their superiors more than losing battles." Operation Goodwood, 18–20th of July, the largest British armored attack of the campaign, provided another example. SS divisions concentrated around Caen repulsed the attack successfully, but at a terrible cost. The British lost approximately 400 tanks. The SS divisions lost 75% of their remaining armored vehicles and thousands of soldiers. From a purely defensive perspective, the operation was an SS success, but from a strategic perspective, it was unsustainable. The British could replace their losses within weeks through industrial production. The Germans could not. Generaloberst Heinz Guderian, Inspector General of Armored Troops, wrote in a memorandum to Hitler dated the 25th of July, "The SS panzer divisions have fought heroically in Normandy, but their literal interpretation of orders to hold positions has resulted in unsustainable attrition rates. We have lost the equivalent of 3 panzer divisions in 2 months. At this rate, we will have no armored reserves to defend Germany in the autumn. Tenacity must be balanced by economy of force." Hitler rejected the analysis, arguing that the SS willingness to fight to the last bullet made them superior precisely because they did not calculate costs. This response reveals the essence of the divergence. For Hitler and Nazi ideology, sacrifice had intrinsic value independent of military outcomes. Casualty rate analysis, the statistical evidence. German military records allow a quantitative analysis of operational differences between the Wehrmacht and the Waffen-SS. Although these data must be interpreted carefully, considering variables such as operational assignments, equipment quality, and battlefield conditions, the statistical patterns are consistent enough to be significant. The most exhaustive study of German losses in the Second World War was published in 2000 as Deutsche Militärische Verluste im Zweiten Weltkrieg. Its research, based on meticulously tracked records of approximately 18 million members of the German armed forces, provides fundamental data. According to Overmans' analysis, The Waffen-SS suffered approximately 314,000 dead and missing during the war, out of a total strength that peaked at about 900,000. This represents a mortality rate of roughly 34.9%. The Wehrmacht suffered approximately 4.2 million dead and missing out of a total force of about 13 million, representing a mortality rate of around 32.3%. Superficially, these figures appear comparable. However, detailed analysis reveals significant differences when relevant variables are controlled for. SS divisions were theoretically elite units that received priority in equipment, especially armored vehicles and heavy weapons. With better equipment, they should have experienced lower casualty rates, not higher. A particularly revealing analysis comes from comparing SS Panzer divisions and Wehrmacht Panzer divisions during the Ardennes offensive in December 1944, January 1945. The 6th SS Panzer Army, which included 4 elite SS Panzer divisions, operated in the northern sector of the offensive. The 5th Panzer Army, composed primarily of Wehrmacht divisions, operated in the central sector. German operational records show that the 6th SS Panzer Army advanced roughly 40 kilometers in the first 3 days, being stopped before Stavelot and La Glaise. The 5th Panzer Army advanced about 65 kilometers in the same period. Both forces faced comparable American resistance and operated in similar terrain. However, casualty rates differed markedly. British historian Anthony Beevor, in Ardennes 1944-2015, analyses captured German medical records showing that the divisions of the 6th SS Panzer Army suffered approximately 11,000 casualties in the first 2 weeks of the offensive, while the 5th Panzer Army suffered about 8,500 in the same period, despite advancing farther and engaging in equally intense fighting. Operational analyses conducted by the German General Staff after the battle point to specific tactical factors. SS Obersturmbannführer Joachim Peiper, commander of Kampfgruppe Peiper, which led the 6th SS Panzer Army's advance, drove his forces along direct routes without adequate reconnaissance, resulting in traffic bottlenecks and exposure to American flanking attacks. By contrast, General der Panzertruppen Hasso von Manteuffel employed night infiltration, exhaustive reconnaissance, and multiple routes. His approach reflected classic Prussian maneuver warfare doctrine. Peiper followed the SS model of direct aggression, regardless of risk. A particularly revealing document is the February 1945 report of the Generalinspekteur der Panzertruppen. This report compares the operational effectiveness of SS Panzer divisions versus Wehrmacht Panzer divisions based on metrics such as kilometers advanced per tank lost, enemy casualties inflicted per own casualty, and duration of operational effectiveness before needing reconstitution. The report concludes that Wehrmacht Panzer divisions were roughly 22% more effective by these combined metrics, despite SS divisions receiving superior equipment. The analysis attributes the difference to what Sarine, excessive tactical aggressiveness resulting in unnecessary attrition of material and human resources. The commander's perspective. Testimonies from captured German commanders provide invaluable insight into these operational tensions. In the immediate post-war period, Allied intelligence extensively interrogated German officers, producing thousands of pages of testimony preserved in military archives in the United States, the United Kingdom, and Germany. Von Rundstedt was interrogated at length by British intelligence in 1945. His statements are particularly revealing. The Waffen-SS were individually brave soldiers that I never questioned, but their officers lacked the staff training necessary to command large formations efficiently. They confused obstinacy with determination. A good commander knows when to withdraw to preserve his forces. A fanatic only knows how to die uselessly. Asked specifically about the Rostov incident in which Dietrich disobeyed his order, he replied, "Dietrich was a party thug without formal military education. In any professional army, he would have been court-martialed for insubordination that endangered an entire army group." But the SS answered directly to Himmler and Hitler, making normal military discipline impossible. Guderian offered a technical perspective in his interrogations and later in his memoir, Panzer Leader, 1952. SS Panzer divisions received the best Tiger and Panther tanks, but frequently employed them in ways that negated their technical advantages. A tiger was optimal for ambushes and defense in depth. SS commanders often used them in frontal attacks, where their poor mobility and high silhouette made them vulnerable. We lost irreplaceable tanks because commanders without adequate training did not understand the capabilities and limitations of their equipment. Geyer von Schweppenburg provided the most technical analysis. In an extensive report written in captivity in 1946, he analyzed the Hitlerjugend specifically. This division was composed of young men fanatically brave but tactically naive, commanded by officers whose selection prioritized political loyalty over military competence. The result was predictable: courage squandered through incompetence. Testimonies from captured SS officers provide the necessary counterpoint. SS Brigadeführer Fritz Kramer, Chief of Staff of the 6th SS Panzer Army, defended SS tactics from an ideological perspective. The army generals thought we were crazy for attacking when we should consolidate, for standing fast when we should withdraw. They did not understand that we were not merely fighting for territorial objectives or tactical advantages. We were fighting to demonstrate superiority of will. This is the difference between material war, which the army generals understood, and ideological war, which the SS waged. This statement perfectly encapsulates the fundamental divergence. For Kramer and SS ideology, war was not about achieving political aims by militarily efficient means, but about demonstrating racial and spiritual superiority. Sacrifice had intrinsic value, independent of tactical outcomes. Conclusion: fanaticism as military doctrine. Analysis of documentary, statistical, and testimonial evidence converges on a fundamental conclusion. The Waffen-SS operated according to a military doctrine that systematically prioritized ideological fanaticism over tactical efficiency. This was not simply propaganda or enemy perception, but an operational reality, documented in German military records themselves. The question, elite of the Reich or cannon fodder, admits of a nuanced answer. The Waffen-SS were simultaneously both, and it is precisely this contradiction that reveals something fundamental about the nature of the Nazi regime. They were elite in terms of equipment, ideological selection, and political priority. They received the best tanks, the best weapons, and privileged access to resources. In this sense, they embodied the Nazi ideal of the superior racial warrior. But paradoxically, the very ideology that defined them as elite condemned them to casualty rates that objectively made them cannon fodder for a lost cause. The fanaticism that was supposed to be their greatest strength was simultaneously their fundamental tactical weakness. The refusal to withdraw tactically, the insistence on frontal attacks against prepared positions, the literal interpretation of orders to stand fast at all costs. All these behaviors resulted in reduced real military effectiveness. The numbers are unequivocal. Waffen-SS divisions suffered approximately 30% higher losses than comparable Wehrmacht divisions, despite having better equipment. This is not the profile of a military elite in the traditional professional sense. It is the profile of an ideological organization willing to sacrifice military effectiveness for doctrinal purity. The tension between the Wehrmacht and the Waffen-SS was not mere bureaucratic friction. It represented a fundamental conflict between two conceptions of war. The Wehrmacht, with all its criminal complicity, retained vestiges of the Prussian military tradition that viewed war as a political instrument to be conducted efficiently. The Waffen-SS embodied the Nazi vision of war as an existential racial trial in which sacrifice has intrinsic value. This divergence explains why professional Wehrmacht commanders criticized SS tactics. It was not a moral objection, but a professional one. From a traditional military perspective, squandering human resources through misapplied fanaticism is incompetence, regardless of ideological motivations. The history of the Waffen-SS illustrates a broader paradox of the Nazi regime. The ideology that supposedly made Germany invincible contained the seeds of its defeat. The Nazi rejection of professional military thought in favor of ideological fanaticism contributed directly to Germany's military catastrophe. The very qualities celebrated by Nazi propaganda, fanatical tenacity, willingness to sacrifice, refusal ever to retreat, were tactically counterproductive in modern war against enemies with material superiority. The testimonies of captured commanders reveal that this contradiction was understood by German military professionals during the war, but the regime's political structure made it impossible to correct. Criticizing SS tactics meant criticizing Nazi ideology itself. The legacy of the Waffen-SS in military historiography is complex and often distorted. Post-war apologists built myths about their extraordinary military effectiveness, but declassified German military records tell a different story. Units that fought with undeniable bravery but often questionable tactical competence, suffering disproportionate losses due to a doctrine that valued fanaticism over the preservation of force. For students of military history, the case of the Waffen-SS offers a lasting lesson. Ideological fanaticism is no substitute for professional competence in modern war. Effective armies require leadership capable of balancing courage with judgment, determination with flexibility, and ideological commitment with tactical realism. The Waffen-SS sacrificed that balance on the altar of ideological purity, and the casualty rates document the consequences of that choice. The documents speak clearly. The Waffen-SS were the ideological elite of the Nazi regime. But that same ideology turned them into something no truly professional military organization would aspire to be: willing, even eager, cannon fodder for a cause that was militarily and morally doomed from the outset.